Today is May 6th. Welcome to Big Book Daily. My name is Rob. I am an alcoholic. It is a thrill, honor, and joy to be here with you today as we journey through the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. Today, out of the Big Book, we're going to be reading more about alcoholism, pages 41 to 42, and the personal stories, part 2, They Stopped in Time, story number 12, Winner Takes All. We're actually going to finish that story, and it's a good one. Pages 379 through 381, and we're going to continue our journey through this 12 and 12 by reading tradition number 2, page 135. Guys, I hope you're having a great morning. To borrow a line from today's personal story, let's expect a miracle today. You know, I've said it many times, if we look for the good, we will find it. And we'll be given a brand new set of 24 hours, and it's up to us who we choose to be today. So with that, let's go ahead and get to the good stuff. All right, so if you recall from yesterday, we've been reading a story from about our man Fred, who's very charismatic, very respected, and he believes that self-knowledge is going to take care of his alcoholism. So he does a little bit more field experience here on page 41. Let's see how things work out for him. So he is on a business trip. I'll actually just read the last few lines yesterday. I went about my business, and for a time all was well. I had no trouble refusing drinks and began to wonder if I had not been making too hard of work of a simple matter. One day I went to Washington to present some accounting evidence to a government bureau. I had been out of time before on this particular dry spell, so there was nothing new about that. Physically, I felt fine. Neither did I have any pressing problems or worries. My business came off well. I was pleased and knew my partners would be too. It was the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon. So that's where we ended up yesterday. But, you know, you can almost sense it. Oh no. We're on page 41. We're going to read 41 and 42 today. I went to my hotel and leisurely dressed for dinner. As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to mind that it'd be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner. That was all, nothing more. I ordered a cocktail and my meal. Then I ordered another cocktail. After dinner, I decided to take a walk. When I returned to the hotel, it struck me that a highball would be fine before going to bed. So I stepped into the bar and had one. I remember having several more that night and plenty the next morning. I have a shadowy recollection of being in an airplane bound for New York, and of finding a friendly taxicab driver at the landing field instead of my wife. The driver escorted me about for several days. I know little of where I went or what I said and did. Then came to the hospital with the unbearable mental and physical suffering. As soon as I regained my ability to think, I went carefully over that evening in Washington. Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time, I had not thought of the consequences at all. I had commenced to drink as carelessly as though the cocktails were ginger ale. I now remember what my alcoholic friends had told me, how they prophesied that if I had an alcoholic mind, the time and place would come, I would drink again. They had said that though I raised a defense, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. Well, just that did happen, and more. For what I had learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. I knew from that moment that I had an alcoholic mind. I saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help in those strange mental blank spots. I had never been able to understand people who said that the problem had them hopelessly defeated. I knew then, and it was a crushing blow. All right, so we'll move on to the personal stories now. Again, we're going to Winner Takes All, reading pages 379 through 381, finishing the story today. So our friend who's blind here, she has finally gotten some hope in her life. You know, she had kind of a rough upbringing and everything. Now she has some hope. She's gotten plugged into AA. by some friends. I mean, she reached out to AA and some friends kind of told her, hey, the reason you drink is not because you're German, not because of your marriage, not even because of your blindness. It's because you're alcoholic. And we're going to see how our friend here takes initiative on page 379. Beautiful ending here. When I was 3 years sober, I made one of the most difficult decisions I'd ever made. I left the marriage. I did not leave because I didn't love him. I still love him. But the marriage was not a healthy place for me to be. I found myself with 2 children to support. I was legally blind and had no job skills. When I moved out, I first moved into public housing for blind people. This was a shocking experience for me, but it was full of growth. For the first time in my life, I was learning to accept my handicap. Before this, I would plan out my day as if I could see, and then plan it out again based on the fact that my vision was limited. Through the Commission for the Blind, I got involved in a program that helps blind people become self-employed. After 3 months of training, I moved to a city a couple of 100 miles away where I knew no one. I lived in an apartment that was about a mile from a coffee shop that I operated. I would walk to work at 6:30 a.m., carrying $200 in open cash on a dark road, and I was afraid. I had 2 people working for me, and on my second day, one of them did not show up. I had never run a business before, and my 3 months of training just didn't seem enough. It was a hard time for me. A lady from a major food company came by to take my grocery order, and I didn't have a clue how much coffee, bacon, or hamburger meat I needed. She shared with me what the previous manager had ordered and helped me place an order. God only knows how we got on the subject, but she was a member of AA, and later would become my new sponsor. She picked me up and took me to the meetings, and at one of the meetings, I met a guy who, for the next year, picked me up and drove me to work. I paid him $1 each morning. I'm sure that did not cover his gas, but it helped me to feel that I was paying my way. For the first time in my life, I was now supporting myself. This is just an example of how God works in my life. No longer did I have to drink, but it was much more than that. Everything I needed was provided. I had a God of my understanding that helped me in every aspect of my life. In working the steps, my life changed. I think differently today. I feel different today. I am new. We have a sign at the AA meetings I go to that says, "Expect a miracle." My sobriety is full of miracles. When my son filled out an application for college, I filled out one too and was accepted. Soon I will be a senior and I have a 3.71 grade point average. Thanks to AA, I have come a long way from being near the bottom of my high school class. It takes me a lot longer to read the material, so I have a CCTV. I put my book under this camera and it comes out in big print on a monitor. I have a talking calculator that helped me to get through statistics and a telescope that can help me see the board. I accept help from disabled student services and gladly make use of volunteer note takers. I learned to accept the things I could not change, in this case my vision, and change the things I can. I could be grateful for and accept the visual aids instead of being embarrassed and rejecting them as I had when I was younger. I have already told you about some of the miracles that have happened. However, there's more. I want to tell you how I feel inside. I am no longer spiritually bankrupt. It's as if I have a magic source in my life that has provided me with all I need. I just celebrated my 12th year of sobriety a couple months ago. When I first came to AA, I didn't know who I was. My sponsor said, "Great. If you don't know who you are, you can become whomever God wants you to be." Today, I am doing things that I never dreamed possible. More importantly, it is the peace and serenity I feel inside that keeps me coming back. I have been through hard times in and out of sobriety. But before AA, it didn't matter how good things got. I always had a feeling that something was wrong. Since AA, it doesn't matter how bad things get, I always have a feeling that everything is going to be all right. In working the 12 steps, my life and my old way of thinking have changed. I have no control over some of the things that happen in my life, but with the help of God, I can choose how I will respond. Today, I choose to be happy, and when I'm not, I have the tools of this program to put me back on track. Oh man, some gold here. Can't wait to come back to this in a minute. All right, and finally today we're in the 12 and 12, tradition number 2. For our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. So with that, yesterday we were talking about how a founder, there's rumblings that they want to change up the chairperson and some things like that. How is the founder going to respond? So we're going to kind of build on that idea by reading the bottom of 134 and most of 135. This brings us straight to the question, does AA have real leadership? Most emphatically, the answer is yes, notwithstanding the apparent lack of it. Let's turn again to the deposed founder and his friends. What becomes of them? As their grief and anxiety wear away, a subtle change begins. Ultimately, they divide into 2 classes known in AA slang as elder statesmen and bleeding deacons. The elder statesman is one who sees the wisdom of the group's decision, who holds no resentment over his reduced status, whose judgment, fortified by considerable experience, is sound, and who is willing to sit quietly on the sidelines patiently awaiting developments. The bleeding deacon is one who is just as surely convinced that the group cannot get along without him, who constantly connives for re-election to office, and who continues to be consumed with self-pity. A few hemorrhage so badly that, drained of all AA spirit and principle, they get drunk. At times, the AA landscape seemed to be littered with bleeding forms. Nearly every old-timer in our society has gone through this process in some degree. Happily, most of them survive and live to become elder statesmen. They become the real and permanent leadership of AA. Theirs is the quiet opinion, the sure knowledge and humble example that resolves a crisis. When sorely perplexed, the group inevitably turns to them for advice. They become the voice of the group conscience. In fact, these are the true voice of Alcoholics Anonymous. They do not drive by mandate. They lead by example. This is the experience which has led us to the conclusion that our group conscience, well advised by its elders, will be in the long run wiser than any single leader. Okay, so some great stuff there, and I have gotten to know some of these elder statesmen who say very little, but their actions speak so loudly. And these are the people that I really try to gravitate towards and emulate, because when they do speak, it's usually just wisdom that seems to just hit me right between the eyes. And it's exactly what I need to hear at that time. These men and women are the examples of putting the group before the individual and realizing that suffering alcoholics out there need this group. It's not about one person. All right, and moving back to the big book real fast. For Fred, he realizes, and once again we see our italics here, as I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to mind that it would be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner. That was all. So there comes the insanity, which eventually, when he has that first drink, triggers the allergy. And again, self-knowledge, he says here emphatically, was not enough for him. But the good news is there's hope for Fred. And speaking of hope, oh my goodness, this personal story today I thought was absolutely beautiful. She doesn't play the victim. She finally, maybe earlier on in her life during her alcoholism, maybe she did, but at least here on page 379, she's doing things. She's staying active, acting her way into the right thinking. She says, I left my marriage. I did not leave because I didn't love him. I still love him, but the marriage was not a healthy place for me to be. And we don't know the full story, obviously, and we don't need to know. But she was wise enough to realize this is very unhealthy for me. So she sets up a boundary. And then she says, for the first time in my life, I was learning to accept my handicap. So here, she goes, okay, I can't change the fact that I'm blind. I cannot change that. But what can I change? Well, next paragraph. Through the Commission for the Blind, I got involved in a program that helps blind people become self-employed. So once again, she's not a victim here. She's doing something about it. Okay, she's trying to find a job. And then sure enough, she gets a job. Doesn't really go that well for her at the very beginning. However, the person that comes in, it's a lady from a major food company, came by to take my grocery order. Well, guess what? This person happens to be in AA. I mean, I'm just grinning ear to ear. The God of my understanding lined that right up. She eventually starts going to AA regularly and gets a ride to and from work. She says right here, this is just an example of how God works in my life. No longer did I have to drink, but it was much more than that. I love this line. Everything I needed was provided. I had a God of my understanding that helped me in every aspect of my life. I just thought AA was about not drinking. But I can relate to that line right there. I had a God of my understanding that helped me in every aspect of my life. She quotes the line from one of her meetings, expect a miracle. If you go in there and know looking for the miracles today, I promise you, my friends, you'll find them. I'm going to look for some miracles today. And one miracle in her life is that she's about to graduate from college. And another miracle in her life, maybe even more important on 381, is her spiritual transformation. It says here, I am no longer spiritually bankrupt. It's as if a magic source in my life has provided me with all I need. There it is again. And I love this line from the sponsor too. For those who don't really know who they are, the sponsor responds, great. If you don't know who you are, you can become whomever God wants you to be. Steering into the person that God intended for us to be. And I love this part here. Since AA, it doesn't matter how bad things get. I always have a feeling that everything is going to be all right. And I can relate to her. Before sobriety, even if things were going good, I was always waiting for that other shoe to drop. Since sobriety, on the good days, where I'm doing what I need to do, I always have a feeling that everything's going to be all right. And then finally, the last paragraph, all about choice. In working the 12 steps, my life and my old way of thinking have changed. I have no control over some of the things that happen in my life, but with the help of God, I can now choose how I will respond. And today, I choose to be happy. And when I'm not, I have the tools of this program to put me back on track. See, that's the great thing too. Even if my serenity's a bit off, I'm not powerless over that. I can choose to work the steps. I can choose to make amends if I need to, choose to pray. I have spiritual tools, and as a friend in rooms once said, he's got higher power tools. He calls them his power tools to work with in these 12 steps. And that's a wonderful thing. So my friends, all I can say is I hope you have a great one today. I don't speak on behalf of AA or NA or Al-Anon, any other sect, denomination. I am just a grateful man in recovery. And I'm grateful that you're here today. If you are sober today, you are a miracle. And those who love you are very proud of you. So this is a charge for myself and anybody who might be listening. Let's expect a miracle today. And if we are given another set of 24 hours, I look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow.